Alright guys, how's it going? The Eastbayanglers out here today, EBA. We're talking all about jerkbaits today. We're talking about jerkbait fishing, how to fish them. We're talking about ways to fish them. And we're also going to talk about modifications, special modifications. So we're going to give you basically a whole bunch of ways to fish a jerkbait that are, some are more common, some are less known, and we're going to talk about a bunch of modifications that are, you know, kind of like my secret modifications to jerkbaits that allow me to catch a lot more fish. So let's go ahead and get started. When it comes to jerkbait fishing, you know, in general, of course, you know, cadence is everything. So you start out with a slower cadence. Whatever your cadence is, whether it's 1-2, 2-1, 3-1, 1-3, 1-1-3, 1-1-2, 2-2, you know, whatever your cadence is, start slower when the water temperature is colder. That's the standard golden rule. When the water temp's warmer, you're going to go with a faster, you're just going to go faster in the motion of that cadence. But keep in mind that this is just a standard rule, and sometimes, you know, I've came out when the water's warm, used the, you know, really fast, really aggressive, and then after, you know, catching them a bunch of days go by, I actually have to like slow down. It's almost like yeah, it's interesting. So there's going to be days where, you know, these fish are going to act a bit different. Some days they're going to want it a little slower, even in the warm months. Some days they might want it a little faster, even in the colder months of the year. So I really like to, you know, basically fish a jerkbait like everybody else would. I crank it down about 10 to 12 cranks and I start jerking. You don't want to sit there and crank it forever. Every time you jerk it, that bait's going to go deeper in the water column until it reaches its max depth. Now, it's really important to remember when you're jerking your jerkbait, you want to go side to side or you want to go down at an angle to the side. You do not want to go up. At least my experience has been terrible. So that's pretty much, you know, the main way you're going to want to fish a jerkbait. There are going to be other times which are going to be rare, or not rare, but not as common, where you're going to want to work that jerkbait more like a crankbait. You're just going to like slow roll it, and maybe every once in a while you can throw a jerk or a pause in there, and that can work pretty good. Sometimes, you know, moving it faster and doing that when they're lethargic can also work. So it's really another technique that does well certain transitional periods, especially throughout the year. And as far as modifications, that's the big one, right, guys? How are you going to modify this jerkbait to catch more fish? Well, a lot of people, you know, they talk about adding, you know, different trebles or a different kind of treble. And I'm going to tell you, add some feathers on the back of your treble, things of that nature, emulator, flash, tinsel. That's going to get an entirely different look. And you know, the more time you spend thinking about the colors and the patterns and things like that for a particular fishery, the more it's going to pan out for you. So the feather has to be the right color. I generally like white and black. Sometimes I'll go with something like a red, but those are pretty simple. I don't try to go too fancy too much because those work as far as feathered tails, flash, emulator. The next modification we're going to talk about is going to be something called suspend dots. They're made by Lure Jensen, and they're basically an adhesive lead strip that you're going to go ahead and stick on your jerk baits to get them to have the nose go, so you'll put them on the head. You can center a bait that's not centered. You can, get that head to have a more of a downward arc in the water column as you're jerking it by adding, weight to the front. And at the same time, I've added them at the back of the lure as well, at the tail, and to almost give a jerk bait that can only get down to, say, 4 feet, like 110. I'll do that sometimes, put 1 on each of the sides on the back and 4 on the front. And the reason I do that is to kind of give it some balance. Sometimes I'll even double on the back to give it the same exact action as it would have, except I'm able to get that bait about 3 feet deeper. So there's circle strips and there's long strips that are long in shape, like a long table, and those are going to be your options for that. That's really effective. And the next thing we're going to talk about when it comes to jerkbait fishing is going to actually be taking off the front 2 hooks, leaving the back hook on, and throwing the jerkbait right in all the grass and the structure and all that stuff. Just throwing it in all the thick stuff, and just with that 1 treble hook on the back. Sometimes you can downsize that treble hook so that there's less snags and less things that snag up on it, but the goal is to be able to fish that more in cover, and it's very effective because you can twitch it on top, you can just make it go under the surface, and you can kind of entice a fish, annoy a fish, keep your bait in the same area for a long period of time. So that's another thing you can do. And another way to do that is to just go straight braid and rip it through the grass mats and stuff. But the thing is, you're just going to get so many casts where you're just going to come up with so much stuff that it can get really frustrating. All right, so the last way that I want to talk about that you can modify your jerkbait is essentially what you're going to do is you're going to play with the actual nose bend. So sometimes you get a lure right out of the package and there's like a nose, it's an eye, I guess, in the front of the lure, on the nose of it. It's where you tie up, and sometimes that's just not centered. And keeping it tuned, keeping it centered, and one of the ways you're going to do this is you're going to get a bowl. I'm sorry, not a bowl. You're going to get a large container of some sort, like a large bowl or a pot. A large pot or something of that nature. Fill it with water, and you're going to want to put your jerk baits in, and you're going to want to play with that, because a lot of times you have jerk baits sitting in your tackle box that are really good, but they've been fished or they're just not tuned, and they just need to be tuned, and they're going to catch more fish. But a lot of times people just kind of gets overlooked. It's like, oh, well, I don't think that it matters that much, but you'd actually be surprised how many times lures do not come tuned, even high-end lures. So I hope that this helps you guys the next time you go out fishing jerkbaits. Try to remember pure fluorocarbon is your friend, and you can get, you know, away with other things, like, you know, you can get away with copolymer and braid to fluoro, and even straight braid when the water is just chocolate milk. You know, the worse the water clarity, the more you can get away with in any situation. Jerkbaits are an all-around, you know, annual bait. They fish them all year long. These are not the kind of baits you have to put away. You just have to change, like I said, those cadences I just mentioned. That's pretty much the cadences that it, you know, that's what we got. You know, that's what people do. So it's just slowing it down or speeding it up once you figure out what's working. And you know, I gotta tell you guys, really enjoyed helping you. Hope that you catch more fish the next time you're out there fishing jerkbaits. Don't remember, bring core colors. Go for high percentage areas. Eliminate water. And you know, strive to be the best, guys. Stay tuned.